Chiefs Kingdom, welcome into a brand new episode of the Chiefs Report. On today's show, guys, we're going to be breaking down the Chiefs depth charts and projecting who's going to be making the 53-man roster at every single position. All right, guys, welcome into a brand new episode. Like I said, we're projecting the depth charts and the 53-man roster at every position. Before we do that, though, make sure you guys play alongside all of us here at Chat Sports on PrizePicks and sign up for PrizePicks with code HMA. When you play your first $5 lineup, you'll get an extra $50 in lineups. But let's get right into it with the QB depth chart. So here we go. I really like the way this QB room is coming together. Obviously, you got Mahomes at the top. Can't complain about that for sure. Justin Fields, though, incredibly high-quality backup. A guy that was a starting quarterback for the last couple of seasons, although not a high-quality starting quarterback. And then you have Garrett Nussmeier in the 7th round, a QB a lot of guys were talking about in the 4th round of this year's draft as a potential guy there as well to be QB3. But unfortunately, I do think this means Chris Oladokun is getting released or hitting the practice squad at best. He's still on the roster right now, but I think we saw last year, in the time that Oladokun did spend as the Kansas City Chiefs starter, Shane Bichelle in there a little bit as well, he's just not a quality NFL backup at the end of the day. And I say that with all due respect for Chris Oladokun. I'm not trying to be mean. I do appreciate what he was able to accomplish, keeping the ship kind of afloat a little bit, just keeping it rolling through a season that was kind of already lost. But at the end of the day, I think no one can deny that Chiefs team looked pretty bad when Chris Oladokun was the starter. Oladokun himself did not look that great. But now, with the new backups, with Justin Fields and with Garrett Nussmeier behind Patrick Mahomes, it's almost undeniable. This is a top 5 quarterback room in the NFL. The Kansas City Chiefs, I think, truly have one of the best QB rooms in the NFL. And I think their QB room was solid last season, just off the strength of Mahomes alone. But beyond that, they didn't have great depth at quarterback. Their backup situation was bad, and we ultimately saw that cost them at the end of the year. I don't think Justin Fields would have been able to salvage things from where they were, but ultimately, this year they're in a better spot as far as backup QB goes. They're also in a much better spot in the running back room, my friends, as we continue rolling through today's show onto our next position here. Another room that you feel really good about. 2 splashy additions here, or 3 really splashy additions here in Kenneth Walker, Emmett Johnson through the draft. Obviously, Ken Walker, kind of the prize jewel of free agency and really the Chiefs offseason in general. And then you also get Amari DiMercato, a guy who has had a great role in the Arizona Cardinals offense. Obviously, the highlight of, or low light of his season last year was fumbling on the 1-yard line. But you take that out, dude played pretty well, and it is a hard thing to just take out. But those 3 guys feel very established on this roster, and it leaves 3 bubble candidates as of right now. Brashard Smith, EJ, son of Emmett Smith, and Jaydn Ott. As of right now, and again, I'll say it's possible we hear something throughout training camp about either of these 2 guys being surprise candidates. I will say, as a Oklahoma fan, Boomer Sooner, Jaydn Ott, not somebody I'm a huge fan of. He came into this Oklahoma program with a lot of expectations last year and was not the guy that anybody attached to the program or rooting for the team was hoping that he would be after being a big-time NIL acquisition from Cal. And he's dealt with some injuries over the last couple of years. I question whether or not he's ever going to be that guy. He wasn't good enough to get on the field at Oklahoma last year, so it's hard to see him making an NFL roster. EJ Smith had a role to play at Texas A&M behind Le'Veon Moss, but again, kind of hard to see him hanging on as well, or at least out-jousting Brashard Smith, who is already established in this room as an incumbent who had a role last season. I do think they're going to keep Brashard Smith as the 4th back in this room and continue to roll with him. although his role might be even smaller than it was last year. We're going to keep rolling through this entire Chiefs roster, through every position and every depth chart in just 1 minute. But before we do that, I got to give a shout out to the sponsor of today's video, guys. And if you are a regular viewer of the Chiefs Report, you know them, you love them. It's America's #1 sports picks app, our friends over at PrizePicks. Guys, if you love daily fantasy sports, you just want to add more excitement to watching sports like the World Cup, then you've got to try out PrizePicks. Guys, I have been really loving watching the World Cup action. I'm not a huge soccer guy, but it's really getting me into it. And a huge part of the reason why I've been getting into it is my PrizePicks lineups. I'm not going to lie, guys. It just makes watching the action even more exciting, and it's super easy to put together a lineup. All you got to do is pick from 2 to 6 players, and you can select more or less on their stat projections. But if you're not a soccer guy and you're not really looking to get into it, unlike me, then they've got professional football for you as well. And you guys can tailor fade my season-long projections here on PrizePicks. Just drop a follow on my username on PrizePicks. It's Jackson Durham, my first and last name with no spaces. And you can tailor fade this one. I'm going with the less on Fernando Mendoza, the less on Jeremiah Love, and the more on Jordan Tyson. Again, this is season-long projections, a little 20 to win, 120 action. So again, you guys can tell, you can fade. Just do it all at PrizePicks. And if you're new to PrizePicks, make sure you use our promo code. Download the PrizePicks app today. Use code HMA when you play your first $5 lineup to receive $50 in lineups. That's code HMA when you play your first $5 lineup to get an extra $50 in lineups with PrizePicks. The clickable link to download the app is in the comments and the description below. Let's keep rolling. Let's talk about the receiver depth chart. So, I will say, you might notice some new names here, and the reason I leave some of these guys off of our graphics when we normally show them is because of how cluttered and tiny their names start to get if you include as many receivers as there are on the 90-man depth chart, or 90-man roster, right now. So some new faces for those of you who regularly watch the show on our receiver depth chart, but you'll notice a lot of the new faces have little asterisks next to them that indicates I do not think they're going to be making this roster, that they are at best bubble candidates. And so here is the 6 guys that I view as true bubble candidates right now. And I say right now, and I really do mean like right now in this specific moment. I think Jason Brownlee, Andrew Armstrong, Jimmy Holiday, Xavier Loyd, Jeff Caldwell, and Jacob DeJesus are all going to probably struggle to hang on to this roster. Caldwell and DeJesus, have the 2 best chances of anybody in this group. We've heard some good things about Andrew Armstrong as well, but consistently really good things being heard about Caldwell and Jacob DeJesus. So if anyone's going to make it from this group, it's probably going to be one of those 2 guys. But I honestly don't know if any of them will, when the Chiefs do what I expect them to do, which is make an addition in this room. I do expect them to do something here. I know we talked about trading for George Pickens in a recent video. I don't know that that's going to be what it actually is. That's pretty wild at the end of the day. We called that a wild trade idea when we did that. That would be a blockbuster play for this Kansas City Chiefs team. But there are more, shall we say, likely things that you could do, more realistic moves that you could do, free agents that you could go out and sign, restructures that you could make to create the space to do that. And we're going to have that conversation in depth later this week, guys. So make sure you are subscribed and don't miss our in-depth discussion of the best options available at receiver and how the Kansas City Chiefs can kind of make it happen to go out and get them. And we're going to have that either tomorrow or the day after, depending on exactly how the news roll plays. So make sure you subscribe. It's coming this week. Moving on to our next position, the tight end depth chart. This is another one where I don't expect major change. Kelsey, Gray, Wiley could be a bubble candidate, but I do ultimately feel like he hangs on to his spot. Would have been more of a bubble candidate if they had made a more aggressive play at this room, if they had gone out and drafted somebody at this room. Maybe you'd think about Wiley as more of a bubble candidate, but I do think they're going to keep 3 tight ends. They have kept 4 in some years, but I'm expecting 3. And that leaves Jake Briningstool, Tre Watson, and John Gyllenborg as our major bubble candidates. The one to watch, though, guys, of any of those 3 names that might make this roster, Briningstool held on to a practice squad spot last year, so it's possible he could hang on to one again. But John Michael Gyllenborg is the one that I kind of get excited about at this point. Briningstool had some good production during his time at Clemson, but John Michael Gyllenborg very productive at Wyoming last year, and like freaky athletic. Like, dude, just kind of a 101 athlete at the tight end position. Someone you get a little bit like, could we coach him into something if we could be the team to kind of mold this ball of clay? Is it too late to mold this ball of clay at this point? I would like to find out if I'm the Kansas City Chiefs. He's got a basketball background, super, super athletic, incredibly talented kid overall. But can you mold that into skill at the end of the day? A lot of potential there, but a long way from being a productive piece of an NFL offense. So possible practice squad spot for Gyllenborg or Briningstool. Feels like a competition to have in this offseason. Next position to watch here. This is the one where the positions, where one of the ones, I should say, really, where the battle has been intense across the offensive line here at that right tackle position. We've had that conversation a lot. Who's going to hold down that job? At the end of the day, it is an interesting discussion. You've got a number of candidates that are really making their presence felt here. You move off of Wanya Morris because Kahlil Benson feels like he's a riser. Chu Godrick still in that conversation as well, and obviously Jalen Moore, the incumbent. As of right now, these are our 6 bubble candidates along the offensive line. Ethan Driskell held on to a practice squad spot last year. Pete Nygra could stick around as well as a backup at center. Chu Godrick could stick around at right tackle. One of Chu Godrick and Kahlil Benson are going to stick around. Excuse me. I have no doubts about that. Just kind of a question of which of these 2 guys is going to win out that competition. I would love to see that be Benson. I would love to see this Kansas City Chiefs team show or see enough from Kahlil Benson, I should really say, that they feel confident in moving off of Godrick and saying, you know what, we're going to invest in the younger guy here. We're going to invest in the guy who has potential in Kahlil Benson to grow into something more than just a depth piece. And then CJ Hanson and Josh Thompson, also bubble candidates along this offensive line. We're going to keep rolling through this whole roster as we switch gears over to the defense in just 1 second. But before we do, guys, I got to give a shout out to SeatGeek. My favorite thing to do during the summer, my friends, is go out and see a live event. Whether I'm getting out to a sporting event, whether I'm getting out to a concert, I love to round up the buddies, go with my fiance, and go see something live. But the one thing that kills me about doing it is how much it can cost, at least until I found SeatGeek. Guys, SeatGeek has totally changed my ticket buying experience, whether I'm going for some Chiefs tickets, whether I'm going for a World Cup game, which are also available on there. They make the ticket buying experience as easy as it's ever been because of the way they present everything to you. Every ticket on SeatGeek is ranked on a scale of 1 to 10. So you know exactly how good of a deal you're getting. And if you're not a numbers guy, I was never very good at math, they've also got color coding, guys. The green dots represent the really good deals. The red dots represent the really bad deals. So just stick away from those red dots. And something else you can see alongside those colorful dots is your seat view. From any spot in the stadium, you can see exactly what it's going to look like. Make sure there's not going to be a pole in your way when you get to your seat. Guys, I love using SeatGeek, and I've got a code for you to use it as well. You can use code CHAT10 for 10% off your next set of tickets at SeatGeek. That's 10% off any tickets with promo code CHAT10. Make sure you click the link in the description to download the app and have the code automatically add to your account so you can use it later. Thank you, SeatGeek, for sponsoring today's show. Let's keep talking about this depth chart here. Moving on to the defense, starting to talk about the defensive line. We're going to take this in 2 parts. Starting with our edge room. The bubble here is thin. It's a thin group of guys. I'm not going to lie. This is not the deepest room on the Kansas City Chiefs depth chart. So I feel like you're looking for guys to stand out at this point. You would love to keep any of these guys if they show you that they could be productive parts of this rotation. But as of right now, the top 4 feel set for me, or at least top 3, I should say, feel set for me, with George Karlaftis, Ashton Gelati, R. Mason Thomas, and then questionably FAU. Is FAU part of that locked-in top 4? I don't know. It is kind of hard to see the Kansas City Chiefs releasing him at this point. You feel like they might just see it through. But at the same time, if they do ultimately feel like any of these 4 options these 4 bubble guys right here, Tyreke Smith, Anthony Dunn, VJ Anthony, or Ethan Downs, could potentially outperform FAU, then they might go in that direction. Or if another injury comes up with FAU, you may just have to move on with an injury settlement at that point and try it out with one of these guys, or potentially dip into the free agency market. Because again, I don't know that you want to trust any of these guys to be a serious part of the depth rotation here. Unless Anthony Dunn or VJ Anthony are shockingly good as rookies, it's just hard to trust. Tyreke Smith to take a big step forward. Ethan Downs, is he going to take a gigantic leap in year 2? I don't know, guys. At the end of the day, it's hard to see. All right, the other guys on the bubble, the defensive tackle room. We've got a couple interesting names here, some of which are undrafted free agents. Brevard out of Texas, Damon Payne, and Amari McNeil, as well as Marcus Harris, more of a veteran. Hard to see any of these 4 guys securing spots on this roster. With the Kansas City Chiefs adding Khyiris Tonga and drafting Peter Woods, that defensive tackle room alongside Chris Jones obviously feels pretty locked up. It feels like one of the more set rooms on this roster. These 4 guys, going to be hard for them to secure a spot. Next up, the linebacker depth chart. And I've reworked this one a little bit to better represent how the Chiefs are actually going to play things this season. I think it's going to be a weak side linebacker and a middle linebacker in Nick Bolton, but really primarily 2 linebackers on the field rather than 3, which we've been showing in the past with Bassa as a starter. So we have Bassa moved to backup by Drew Tranquill, find my words here. And then Cole Christiansen, of course, in there as well. I think those 2 guys will hold roster spots while Kam Arnold will ultimately be moved on from. Cooper McDonald and Jack Cochrane are a little more questionable, especially Cochrane, who was a special teams nightmare at times last season. But it's been hard to see, or it's going to be hard to see Wesley Bissainthe beat out either of these guys or really anybody in this room because he's been hurt for most of OTAs. He hasn't had a great opportunity to show this team that he can be a big part of it. He needs to get back and get fully healthy by training camp and start to show things in a hurry if he's going to beat out any of the more established guys and these NFL veterans, guys who've already been around the league. As a UDFA, it is a tough thing to do, and it becomes even more tough when you don't get playing time, you don't get any sort of run during OTAs because you're injured throughout it. We heard Dave Tobe talk about Wesley Bissainthe missing time consistently and therefore not standing out. When he was talking about standouts among the UDFA group, that name was mentioned, but only in the context that he's been hurt. Next up, defensive backs. Another group where you're seeing a lot of names here if you're one of our regular viewers that you don't regularly see. And again, quickly finding out why we occasionally leave guys off on the 90-man roster because, man, is it hard to read those 4 names under Mansour Delane. But to help you guys out, that's Christian Fulton, Kaiir Elam, Bryce Phillips, Darko Perkins McAllister. Those are the 4 underneath Mansour. And the 2 that have asterisks are Bryce Phillips and Darko Perkins. On the other side, as far as corners go, we have Melvin Smith Jr. and Zelmar Vetter as new asterisks to potentially be released or sent to the practice squad. And you'll also notice I have swapped Noel Williams and Christian Fulton. If you're a regular viewer, Christian Fulton's been our corner 2 in my eyes for the last couple of weeks, I'll say. But with the signing of L'Jarius Sneed, with the Chiefs feeling the need to do that, and also with everything that we're hearing around Noel Williams and how good he could potentially be for this team, I've moved him up to corner 2. Sneed could potentially threaten to leap Fulton as well if we start to hear good things about how he looks recovering from his injuries and getting back into this Kansas City Chiefs defense. But bubble candidates for this room. Here we go. Elam, even despite being one of the vets here and a former first-round pick by the Buffalo Bills, hard to see him as a locked member of this roster at this point. I've got him in the same category as a lot of these UDFAs as Kevin Knowles and Melvin Smith, who held practice squad spots last season. Again, this room is not deep at the end of the day. So there's opportunities for a lot of these guys to jump off the page for the Kansas City Chiefs and to therefore hold their spots. At this time, though, it's just a little too early in the offseason to say exactly who's going to do that. I think you have to remember, as we get into training camp, we'll do this whole exercise again with an awareness for who was currently on the bubble. I think that's what's interesting about doing it now is you kind of compare to, okay, now that we're in training camp, we kind of thought one way at this point, And now we've started to see things play out because maybe one of Darko Perkins, Bryce Phillips, Deshaun Singleton, maybe Zelmar Vetter, those guys show you more than you're expecting, and you see them secure a roster spot, and it starts to shift who's on the bubble. But as of right now, Kaiir Elam, despite being a veteran, despite having more run time in the NFL than anybody else in this room, it is hard to say that he is locked. I would say he has the best chance of these guys to make it, but it's still pretty hard to say that he's locked, given that he just has not been very good throughout his time in the NFL. All right, guys. That is going to wrap it up for today's episode of the Chiefs Report. We do have the special teams depth chart as well, just hasn't seen any changes, so that's why I left it off for you guys. Same three guys as last season with Butker, Ariza, and James Winchester, all back for another ride with the Kansas City Chiefs. But make sure you hit that subscribe button and make sure you stay tuned because, again, later this week, we're going to be breaking down the best options at wide receiver for the Kansas City Chiefs because I don't think this team is done adding to that room. I don't think that room is set just yet. So make sure you don't miss that one, and I'll see you then.